If you've ever been slapped with a parking fine for taking too long to pay at a private car park, or rushed back to your car in a panic because your time was nearly up, then this video is going to change everything for you. Because right now, in the UK, the rules around private parking on private land have changed in a way that every single driver needs to understand. We're talking about new protections that could save you hundreds, maybe even thousands of pounds. And if you don't know about these changes, you could still be making the same costly mistakes that millions of British drivers make every single year. So stay right here, because by the end of this video, you are going to know exactly what has changed, what it means for you, and what you need to do to protect yourself the next time you pull into a private car park. Part 1. The problem that started it all. Let's go back to where this all began, because to understand why these new rules matter so much, you need to understand just how badly the old system was failing ordinary drivers. For years, private parking companies in the UK have operated in what many people described as a Wild West. Unlike council-run car parks, which are governed by strict local authority regulations, private car parks on private land were largely self-regulated. That meant the companies running them could set their own rules, issue their own fines, and pursue drivers for enormous sums of money, often with very little oversight or accountability. One of the most notorious problems was something that became known in the media as the 5-minute rule. Here's how it worked. When you pulled into a private car park that used camera technology like ANPR, which stands for Automatic Number Plate Recognition, or CCTV, the camera would log the exact moment your vehicle entered. The clock was ticking from that very second. If you then took longer than 5 minutes to pay for your parking, whether because you were fumbling with the machine, had poor signal on your phone, or simply couldn't get the parking app to load, you could be issued a parking charge notice. And not just a small fine either. Some of these charges escalated into hundreds or even thousands of pounds once debt recovery fees were added on. The case that really brought this into the national spotlight involved a woman in Derby who was taken to court and faced a bill of nearly £2,000, all because she took slightly longer than 5 minutes to pay at a private car park. She had poor signal on her mobile phone that day. She had done nothing wrong in any meaningful sense. She had every intention of paying. But under the rules at the time, that did not matter. The private parking company pursued her relentlessly, and her story caused public outrage across the country. That case prompted members of Parliament to take action. The MP for Derby South, along with other MPs, wrote to the government in January 2025 calling for much stronger protection for drivers through a legally enforceable statutory code of practice. The pressure was mounting, and the private parking industry could no longer ignore it. Part 2. What has actually changed? So what are the new rules, and when did they come into force? From the 17th of February 2025, significant changes to the Private Parking Code of Practice came into effect, introduced by the two main trade bodies for private car park operators in the UK, the British Parking Association and the International Parking Community. These changes were overseen by a newly established body called the Private Parking Scrutiny and Advice Panel, known as the PPSAP. The headline change is this: if you park in a private car park that is monitored by ANPR or CCTV camera technology, you will no longer receive a parking charge notice just because you took longer than 5 minutes to pay when you first arrived. Under the new rules, as long as you pay in full for the entire duration of your stay before you leave the car park, you are protected. The 5-minute payment window that caught out so many drivers has effectively been scrapped for camera-monitored private car parks. This is a genuinely significant shift. It means that if your parking app crashes, if the machine is slow to respond, if you struggle to get a signal, or if you simply need a few extra minutes to sort out your payment, you will not automatically be penalized for that delay, provided you complete full payment before driving away. But there is more to the changes than just the 5-minute rule. A new code of practice that began rolling out from October 2024 has also introduced a 10-minute grace period at the end of your parking session. This means that once your paid parking time expires, operators must give you a full 10 minutes before they can legally issue a charge. So if you paid for 2 hours and your time runs out while you're still walking back from the shops, you now have a buffer. You won't be fined for an extra few minutes of overstay as long as you are back and away within that 10-minute window. The code also brings in stricter requirements around signage. All private car parks are now required to display clear, consistent, and easy-to-understand signs. The rules of the car park must be visible, legible, and not buried in small print. This matters because in the past, many drivers received charges for breaching conditions they had no reasonable way of knowing about due to confusing or inadequate signage. There is also a new appeals charter built into the code. This is important. Under the updated rules, there are specific circumstances where a parking company is required to reduce your fine to just £20 if paid within 14 days. These mitigating circumstances include situations where you made a keying error when inputting your vehicle registration, such as getting one letter wrong. They also include cases where you were delayed by a medical situation, a childcare issue, or a vehicle breakdown. If you hold a valid parking permit but simply failed to display it at the time and you can produce it afterwards, that is also grounds for a reduced charge. The same applies to blue badge holders. And if the payment machines were out of order and no alternative payment method was available, you also have grounds to challenge the charge. The maximum parking charge at private car parks remains capped at £100. However, if you pay within 14 days of receiving the notice, private parking companies must reduce that fine by at least 40%, bringing it down to £60 or less. This early payment discount is now part of the code, giving drivers a clearer, fairer structure when dealing with charges. Part 3. What is not covered and where the gaps are. Now, here is the part that you really need to pay attention to, because these new rules do not cover every situation, and there are important gaps that drivers need to be aware of. First, these changes only apply to private car parks that are monitored by ANPR or CCTV camera technology. If you park in a private car park that does not have this kind of camera monitoring, the new protections around the 5-minute rule do not apply to you. Second, and this is crucial, none of these changes apply to council-run car parks. Council-operated car parks work under a completely different legal framework. They issue what are called penalty charge notices, which are official fines backed by law, rather than the parking charge notices issued by private companies, which are technically civil invoices. The rules that have changed are only for private land parking, not for public authority-run parking. Third, these new rules only apply to operators who are registered members of the British Parking Association or the International Parking Community. If a private car park is run by a company that is not a member of either of these trade bodies, the code does not bind them. So before you assume you are protected, it is worth checking whether the car park operator is a member of one of these associations. Fourth, even under the new rules, you are still required to pay for the full duration of your stay from the moment you enter the car park. This is a common point of confusion. If you arrive at 2 in the afternoon, take 15 minutes to pay, and then pay for 1 hour from 2:15 to 3:15, you could still be at risk of a charge for those initial 15 minutes. The protection is that you have flexibility in when you complete payment, but you must still cover the full time from your entry, not from when you eventually paid. Fifth, Even if the payment machine is broken or the parking app does not work, simply leaving quickly does not automatically protect you. Technically, you have still not paid for your stay, and you could still face a charge. The mitigating circumstances appeal process is your best option in that scenario. Part 4. The bigger picture and what is still to come. It is important to put these changes in context. While the new rules are a genuine step forward for drivers, consumer groups and motoring organizations have been quick to point out that they do not go far enough. The original solution to the problems with private parking was supposed to be a government-backed statutory code of practice introduced under the Parking Code of Practice Act 2019. That act was designed to create legally enforceable standards across the entire private parking industry, including firm caps on charges, restrictions on debt recovery fees, and mandatory grace periods. However, in 2022, the government was forced to withdraw the proposed code after several private parking companies issued legal proceedings against it. The code never came into full effect. The changes that came into force in February 2025 are an industry-led voluntary code, not a statutory one. That means they are not backed by the force of law in the same way a government code would be. The RAC, one of the UK's leading motoring organisations, has criticised the changes as insufficient. Simon Williams, head of policy at the RAC, described the industry's move as an attempt to look fair rather than a genuine overhaul, and said that without a statutory code, drivers remain vulnerable to the worst practices in the sector. The government has since announced a new consultation on a statutory private parking code of practice, which ran from July to September 2025. This consultation covered areas including caps on parking charges, debt recovery fees, grace periods, and the appeals process. The government has said it will respond to the consultation in due course, meaning there could be further changes coming down the line that go much further than what is currently in place. For now, the new industry code is the protection you have on private land. Existing car parks have until late 2026 to fully comply with all elements of the code, while all new car parks were required to comply from October 2024 onwards. So, depending on where you park, the full range of protections may not yet be in place at every site. Part 5. What you should do right now. So, what does all of this mean practically for you as a driver? Here is what you need to do. Always read the signs at any private car park before you park. The law requires that signs are now clearer and more consistent, but it is still your responsibility to understand the terms and conditions of any car park you use. If you receive a parking charge notice, do not ignore it. Check who issued it. If it came from a private company rather than a council, it is a civil invoice, not a criminal fine. You have the right to appeal it. If you believe you have a valid reason to challenge the charge, appeal directly to the parking operator first. Set out your case clearly, include any evidence you have such as photos, receipts, or proof of a broken payment machine, and reference the new code of practice where relevant. If your appeal to the operator is rejected, you can escalate to an independent appeals service. If the car park operator is a British Parking Association member, you go to Poplar. If they are an International Parking Community member, you use the IAS. These are free services for drivers. Keep records of everything. Photograph the signage at the car park. Keep your payment receipts or screenshots. Note the time you arrived and the time you left. If a dispute arises, this evidence could be the difference between winning and losing an appeal. And if you ever find yourself facing a charge under the old 5-minute rule system, or any charge that seems unfair, know that the mitigating circumstances provisions in the new code give you real grounds to fight back. The private parking industry in the UK has operated for too long without proper accountability, and these changes, while not perfect, represent real progress for drivers. The scrapping of the 5-minute rule, the introduction of grace periods, clearer signage requirements, and a fairer appeals process are all steps in the right direction. But the fight for a fully statutory code of practice that protects every driver at every private car park is not over yet. We will be keeping a close eye on the government consultation and bringing you updates as they come. If this video helped you understand your rights, please share it with someone who drives in the UK, because this is information that every motorist needs to know. And if you want to stay ahead of the latest fines, rules, and legal changes affecting drivers across the country, make sure you subscribe to UK Fines Alerts. We break down the laws and regulations that affect your wallet and your license in plain English every single week. Hit that subscribe button now and join the community that is keeping British drivers informed, protected, and one step ahead. Subscribe to UK Fines Alerts and never miss an update that could save you money. Share.